Can you please state your name?
Diane Foster.
How long have you lived in Carroll County, and what political office do you hold?
I've lived in Carroll County for 9 years, and I'm presently serving my second term as on the Tawnytown City Council.
What was family life like for you when you were growing up, and how has that impacted who you are today?
Well, I grew up in Baltimore City. I was the only girl for quite a while. I had 7 brothers. So when I was growing up in Baltimore, it's quite different than it is now. You know, we played, and you only had to come home when the street lights came on. So that gives you an idea of what it was like when I grew up. I was very protected, obviously, having 7 brothers. My mother later in life did have 2 other children, and they were girls. So I grew up loving baseball because my father liked baseball, my brothers liked baseball. We went to the Oriole games at Memorial Stadium, and that's basically how family life was. My father was the boss, and like I said, I was grew up in a protective environment. So I guess that impacted who I am today. As I said, that my mother had 2 girls later in life, so I was a lot older than they were. As it turned out, my parents both died young, and I ended up raising those 2 girls. They are obviously both adults now, and are married. They each have a son. And I managed that okay because I was always like the big sister / mother. So aside from the devastation of losing 2 parents, it worked out okay.
What effect did politics have on you as you were growing up?
Well, I started working in the federal government quite young, and I worked in the government for 40 years. Half of that time I would say that I worked in the public affairs side of federal government. So as such, I always worked in an office that had direct political ties. And we sort of, to put it mildly, marched to the tune of what was going on in Washington. I worked with a lot of political appointees and did a lot of public affairs work. So I've always sort of been in tune with politics while not being in politics.
What kinds of things were going on in Washington that you just talked about?
Let me see, what kind of things were going on in Washington? I was in public affairs, I guess, from when Nixon was president. And we just saw a difference in the agendas depending on what political party was in charge. It seemed like when the Democrats were in charge, maybe things centered more on I don't know, liberal type agendas, as opposed to when the Republicans were in charge. And like I said, the offices that I worked in always kind of marched to whatever tune that was. And, you know, I didn't hold a high enough position at the time that it directly affected me. I just sort of did the work.
Tell us about how you got interested in politics and who were your mentors?
Okay, I always tell people that when people tell me, oh, I didn't know you were interested in politics, and my answer is, I didn't either. Politics kind of found me. When I moved to Carroll County in Taneytown, I worked for 1 year after moving here. And I had my time in, and the commute was getting to be a bit much to Woodlawn every day. So I decided to retire. Being always actively involved in the community and that sort of thing, I couldn't sit still for long. So I sought out things that were needed around Taneytown. And I got involved with, at the time, our Main Street Committee. And the economic development person there pulled me in and got me involved, and the more I said yes, the more they kept giving me and asking me to do this, that, and the other. And in the middle of some Main Street project, the economic development person there, Nancy McCormick, said to me, you would be good on the city council. And you know, I kind of looked at her and I said, you must be kidding. And she says, no, I think you would be good, you should consider it. And the rest is history.
What were some of the challenges you faced, and how did you overcome them?
Well, the challenges were obviously being new to Carroll County and very new to Taneytown, being African American, never having had an African American represent on the city council in Taneytown. There was one other woman on the council at the time. Excuse me, but that was the challenge that I even said to Nancy when she suggested I would be good. I frankly told her, I don't think this place is ready for me. And she just told me, I think so. So I live in Carroll Vista, which is an active adult community in Taneytown. So I kind of like formed my base right there in Carroll Vista, because we have over 600 residents that live there. And these people are from all walks of life and all areas, not just Carroll County. So they are very politically involved people, unlike a lot of the citizens that live in the town, in Taneytown. So I formed my base there, and I think that's what, as a matter of fact, I know that's what did it for me. Now, as time has gone on, like I said, I'm in my second term, I have formed many more relationships in the town proper, and people know me from the church and and the Heritage Committee, just different other committees. So that's no longer the case as, you know, Carroll Vista being my core group. Now, I just have relationships in the entire town, I'd like to think anyway, and people know me.
Tell me about one of your favorite memories in office.
A favorite memory in office.
Or one of your joys that you just remember so fondly.
Well, obviously one of the favorites is initially taking the oath to be on the council from the mayor.
Talk about that.
That was exciting. It felt, I don't know, I felt important. And a sense of pride when I took that oath. And things since then, you know, we have some times that are trying, particularly when you're dealing with the budget, you know, never enough money and always having to do things. But I guess I have to say that was one of my memorable moments. I guess another would be we formed a partnership with the Silver Oak Academy, which is an alternative school for young men, and we work closely with them. So At my suggestion, the city formalized a partnership with them and did a proclamation and invited the young men to the city council to receive the proclamation from the mayor. I enjoyed that very much.
So what is the partnership doing?
The partnership just says that the City of Tawnytown and Silver Oak Academy work together as needed for the betterment of Tawnytown and both Silver Oak. So the young men help out with any number of things. When we have events that need help, they willingly come and help us. They attend our business breakfast every month. And just anything that we need, they are there to help us. And likewise, if there's anything the town can do to reciprocate for the school, we do so.
Okay. What wisdom did you receive from others about serving in Tawnytown? You spoke about the one lady that encouraged you. Have you gotten wisdom from people that you've been able to use and it's really been successful for you in office?
The town and the members of the city council belong to the Maryland Municipal League. And of course, I belong to the league. And I take advantage of training that they offer whenever I can. So I'm always drawing on the advice from all of the other elected officials that I meet, and they're from all of the municipalities in Maryland. So I constantly draw on their expertise and their advice. As a matter of fact, I am in the middle now of a leadership conference, of which the second session is going to take place later this month. And in that conference, we draw on each other's strengths, we give advice, we role play. You know, they're mayors, they're councilmen, they're city managers, and everybody. We share problems and try to come up with solutions. So I continue to seek that advice, you know, how to persevere and, you know, what did you do with this situation? And here's a situation we have, what do you think? So I'm continuing to draw on, you know, those experiences.
What words of advice would you like to pass on to future generations about politics and the importance of serving the community?
Well, I would like for young people to get involved. You know, attend your town meetings, find out what's going on, learn the inner workings. Oftentimes, people shout about what they want and what is needed without understanding all of the little details that go into these things. You know, people just want things and don't understand the budgetary process and don't understand the things that the state mandates that you do, and you have to find money for it. They don't understand when you have to raise taxes and water bills. So my suggestion is for people, not just young people, everybody, get involved, attend your council meetings, know your council people, and just get involved in the process.
Now, is there anything else that you would like to share that I might not have touched on that you think is important for people to know about you?
You previously asked me about a memorable moment. I just thought of one.
Okay.
When you are first elected, the governor holds a reception in Annapolis for newly elected officials. Now, I was very, very happy to be in a position to attend that. And the governor, of course, you know, they had a little ceremony, and everybody who's newly elected is there. So there are quite a few people in the room. So after the ceremony, the governor and the lieutenant governor kind of worked the room and, you know, get to one-on-one with everybody. And when the governor got to me and I introduced myself and said where I was, his mouth dropped open. And he said, "What did you say?" And I repeated, you know, where I was from. And the lieutenant governor was like, you know, on the other side of the room, and he beckoned to him. He said, come here, I want you to hear this." And he says, "Tell him where you're from." Now, I had already met the lieutenant governor, you know, working the room. And he says, "Do you know where she's from?" And he said, "Yeah, I know." She said, "Tawnytown." And he says, "A pioneer." And that's what he referred to me as, a pioneer. And I thought that was special, and I often think about that, and I don't know so much if I'm a pioneer or I just happen to be in the right place at the right time. And I don't know, maybe that is a pioneer.
And what makes you a pioneer?
Because
in Tawnytown, an African-American woman, and
Yes.
you even had your doubts, but what in you makes you a pioneer in this situation?
I guess because I was willing to do it, to try it anyway. And it worked, and here I am.
Well, that was great. Thank you.
And thank you.
Appreciate you coming and sharing. Could you state your name, how long you've lived in Carroll County, and whom you're representing today?
All right, my name is Timothy Augustus Dixon. I have basically lived in Carroll County all my life. I was born in Baltimore, and I've lived here and gone to school here since 1966 when I was in the first grade, second half of the first grade. And I'm representing my father, the former treasurer of Maryland, Richard Nathaniel Dixon.
He was a trailblazer in many ways in Carroll County and in the state of Maryland. Would you share some of the offices that he's held?
His last office with the state was the state treasurer, a constitutional officer in the state. He was treasurer from 1996 to 2002 when he retired. Before that, he was in the General Assembly for 12 or 13 years. And before that, he was on the Carroll County School Board for about 8 years in the 70s.
Okay. As a young child growing up, how would you describe your father? And what were some of his favorite activities?
I would describe him as somebody that, someone with purpose, you know, that had somewhere to be and something to do. He didn't have, in his idle time, he listened to a lot of jazz music and did things with friends, but he went to a lot of meetings. I remember him having to be out of the house often to go to meetings, so he was doing other people's business.
What were some of the challenges your father faced, and how did he overcome them?
One of the biggest challenges he faced is being in a majority Republican county and being a Democrat in a majority Republican county and being in Annapolis where the Democrats are in control of the state house. That was a big issue. There's a political cartoon that I think that gets it about right that has him on a tightrope, up in the air like an acrobat, and dealing with race and politics. And that was one of the biggest things he had to deal with. His district was 98% white in Carroll County, majority Republican. And so some people in Annapolis didn't understand where he was coming from, how he got to be there, and what he had to deal with. He couldn't be a part of the Black Caucus. He didn't feel it was right being being representative of a jurisdiction that was Republican and 98% Caucasian. They didn't understand that, and they didn't understand it when he made the shift from delegate to treasurer. But everybody came around and saw that he was genuinely concerned about black people too eventually. But that was one of the biggest things because Carroll County isn't necessarily thought of highly in Annapolis. So he had that to deal with, and he had he had that to deal with, and he had the fact that some blacks didn't think he was doing all that he should be doing for black folks. So he had to on a tightrope between those two issues that he had to deal with.
Well, it sounds like he was able to really get along with a lot of different people from different perspectives.
I think he was. He was in fraternities. So he was in fraternal organizations. He was with the Kappas. He was with the Boule. So he did work with people. He was with Morgan. So he did work with a lot of people, and he dealt with money in his profession as a stockbroker, and in his professional or in his life as a legislator and as the treasurer, he dealt with money issues. So he dealt with issues that everybody doesn't deal with. I mean, money issues. He was in the General Assembly. When he was in the General Assembly, he was on the Appropriations Committee. And he thought very highly of that because they're the committee that doles out the money for the state, and they decide who gets what money. And as you're well aware, my father was responsible for bringing in a lot of money to Carroll County.
How do you think his background in the military added to who he was?
He said that I've heard him say that his background in the military gave him the ability to chew people out, and not be personal. Just to chew them out to get a point across. They didn't do something right. Chew them out, get back to work. Not chew them out and hold a grudge. So he's always said he learned how to do that in the military because he had to chew people out in the military. So he chalked that up to the military that he learned how to chew people out and not hold a grudge against them, but get the work done.
Okay. What political office did your father talk about most, and what types of things did he share with you about politics?
He talked to me about all the political offices that he held. I mean, I remember, I guess most vividly, the treasurer's office, because that's the most recent, 96 to 2002. But he talked to me about all of them. And what was the rest of the question?
One of his favorite positions or political positions that he talked about?
The state treasurer was his favorite political position because he got to, as he said, he got to use his knowledge about the General Assembly. He got to use his knowledge about finances and retirement and pension that he had picked up. And he got to use all of that as a state treasurer. He was on, state treasurer is part of the Board of Public Works. It's unique in the United States. Maryland is the only state that has it in the country. It's the governor, the treasurer, and the comptroller. And they vote on every state contract. And so that's a lot of power. I mean, he's going to talk about that the most because that's the most powerful position. People thought he worked for the governor or he worked for the comptroller. He's elected by the General Assembly. 141 delegates and senators in the General Assembly vote for whoever the treasurer is going to be because the treasurer represents the General Assembly. And they voted for him. And they have a lot of power because they vote on procurement contracts that the state enters into. And he's one of three people. And there were several times that he and Governor Schaefer blocked something the governor did. I mean, there was an occasion when he and Governor Schaefer, Governor Glendenning wanted to sell land where the ICC now is. And my father and Governor Schaefer blocked that. They wouldn't allow it. The two votes got outvoted, and now the ICC is in existence. So.
Now, why do you think that your father, being an African American, was able to be elected in a county that's overwhelmingly Caucasian?
Well, I think he no doubt got elected because he was qualified. He's local. He's been here. I've been here all my life. That's because he's been here all his life, except for the time he went to Vietnam. When he got out of the Army, he's been here ever since. So 1966, when I said I've been here, he's been here that long and longer because he was raised here, went to school here before I came into the picture. So he's local. You know, he talks to farmers. He talks to everybody in the county. So he had a sense of things, you know, how people felt in the county and what they believed in and what they wanted done. He had a sense of that, and you know, he was one of the people.
Good. Well, your father was instrumental in sponsoring many projects here, as you alluded to, in Carroll County. How does it feel when you pass by the Carroll Hospital and you see the Richard N. Dixon building?
I feel proud and honored to be Richard Dixon's son at those moments. And I hear people when I go to the hospital, when they say, I'm parked at the Dixon lot. and I hear some people say that they don't know, you know, my connection probably, and they don't even know how the Dixon lot became the Dixon lot. But I think it's important enough. That's why I wrote a book about my father, Maryland's first black state treasurer, because I thought it was important enough to for somebody to document it, and I didn't know if anyone else was going to do it. So I said maybe I should try to do something.
And what is your favorite accomplishment of your father?
The fact that he became the first black Maryland state treasurer, that is a tremendous feat. And he did that by parlaying all of his experience with the school board, the General Assembly. He knew the General Assembly voted for the treasurer because he was in the General Assembly 12 or 13 years. He knew he had the votes to become the treasurer because of his financial experience and his experience on the Appropriations Committee. And his colleagues had enough confidence in him to vote for him, and he was reelected. So that was the biggest honor.
And what do you think your father wants people to remember most about him?
Well, I think that he would want people to remember that he was one, and we were at a time where he brought back the bacon. He brought back bacon to the county, and the county is not always thought of highly in Annapolis. He had something to do with motor vehicle administration, full service motor vehicle administration being in Carroll County. Every county, the 23 counties in the state, they don't have full service MVAs. He had something to do with that. He had something to do with the Maryland police barracks, the new one on 140, the state police training center in Sykesville. Every big project in the last 15, 20 years in the county, he had something to do with. And I think it's important because it's not just how many years you're in the General Assembly that you have to have, you know, service in the General Assembly time, and your colleagues have to be willing to put money to the buildings. He's the one that got the money to the buildings. The new district court. My father was last elected in 1994 as a delegate by the citizens of Carroll County. After that, treasurer, he was elected by the General Assembly. No Democrat has been elected for any countywide or statewide office in this county since 1994. And I think that's a testament to, you know, his status in the county and what he did, because no one's been elected since then, and quite frankly, we haven't gotten the type of money for the county that we got when he was there. Now it's a much tougher haul to get money for the county.
Now I know you are a lawyer in this county.
Yes, in Carroll County.
Did your father play any part in that? Did he inspire you in any way to seek a legal track?
He didn't inspire me to become a lawyer. That I did on my own.
Okay.
But I'm certain, as staying in this county, everybody that's been here for a few years knows about him and his reputation.
What do you think he would want to share with young people today? Especially young African American men.
I would think he would want to share to do your best in school. He was very big on education. Do your best in school. Stay out of stay out of trouble, do your best in school, and you know, there are opportunities out here for you if you keep your nose clean, do your best in school. And I mean, at this time in the world, do the best you can and keep your nose clean, and you should be able to do all right.
And you might have already alluded to this, but I know he went to school in a segregated school. Was he's grown up in Robert Moton's, and then he went on to Morgan. Coming from that kind of humble beginnings, how do you think he made so many opportunities for himself?
I think my father was a very hard worker, and you couldn't outwork him if you had to do something against him. You weren't going to outwork him. When I remember as a child, he always had a magazine or newspaper in his hand. He was always reading something. I mean, he had subscription to maybe 10 or 20 newspapers and magazines that he looked at. You know, I'd see him asleep in the bed with a newspaper in his face, and he took newspapers and magazines to the bathroom. So he was always reading. So he was well aware of what was going on in the world and what was going on in the areas that he considered important.
Okay, all right. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Please state your name, how long you've lived in Carroll County, and the political office you have held or have held in the past.
Well, my name really is Theresa, but I'm Theresa Norris. When I was going to school, growing up, I was Theresa.
Okay.
But then, as I grew up, you know, and I got a job working, and then after I got a job, they started sending me to college, to schools, you know, to get more educated. So then they changed my name to Theresa, but that's not my name. My name is Theresa.
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 Okay.
And we moved out here in 1967.
Okay.
We lived in Baltimore first, and we moved out here in 1967. We had 2 children when we moved out here. I married, my husband's from Carroll County, from Sykesville.
Oh, okay.
That's how I got out here, because we moved back out here from Baltimore.
What political office have you held in the county?
Well, when I first moved out here in 1977, we moved out here in 67. In 77, one of the people in Sykesville, a young man in Sykesville, rapped on my door one Sunday evening, and I went to the door to see who he was, and he was telling me that they were looking for someone to serve on the Sykesville Council. So he asked me would I be willing to serve. And so I said sure, because I wasn't working then. So I said sure. And then I had to went downtown, you know, and had a little meeting with the mayor and some of the other town folks, and I was ready to go. So I served from 1977. I served from 1977 to 1979, and from 79 to 81. And I served 2 terms in the council. So
How did you enjoy serving on the council?
I loved it. I enjoyed it. I really did, because at that time, Sykesville was Sykesville. You know, it hadn't begun to grow yet.
Yes.
And, you know, there was like a grocery store. There were 2 grocery stores, 2 little grocery stores, 1 clothing store, hardware store, and there was a filling station, the fire department, and the post office. That's what was in Sykesville at that time. And I enjoyed it. The reason I enjoyed it was because one thing, I was kind of excited when we moved out here, because my husband had already made up his mind that we were not going to stay in the city, because he didn't want his children raised in the city. So we came out here and bought a piece of ground, and we built a house out here. So, and my son started at South Carroll because
Okay.
he was ready, for, to go to high school. And my daughter, when we first moved out here, she went to Sykesville, I think it was Sykesville Elementary School that Vanessa went to. But I enjoyed serving on the council. It was interesting because I had never done that before, and it was interesting. I enjoyed it. I learned a lot from the townspeople, and everything. It was good.
So you were recognized on the street when you walked?
Oh, yeah. Definitely. I definitely was recognized on the street. But there was no problem because there weren't that many black people in Sykesville at that time. But the ones that were there worked, like the women, did housework.
Yes.
And my father-in-law worked at the lumber yard. So the people were all mingled together. And my mother-in-law was a babysitter.
Okay.
So my husband was raised with the Hates children and all.
Okay.
Yeah, they were all raised together. So there was really no problem, Everybody, because I came from the city, nobody really wanted to have that much to do with me anyway, because I come out here from Baltimore, and that was a bad move.
That was like coming from a foreign country, huh?
Yes, indeed. Yes, it was, because when we first moved out here, they used to call our children city slickers.
Oh, okay.
Because, but I enjoyed being on the council. It was a lot. And I really ran for the third term.
Okay.
But I lost that election. That's when Eugene Johnson
that's when
came
Eugene
in.
Johnson.
Yeah, that's when Eugene Johnson came in.
Yes, because we had thought he was the first one until we talked with your brother, Reverend Doug Sands, and he said, no, my sister was the first African-American council person in Sykesville.
He makes sure that everybody knows that.
What was family life like when you were growing up, and how has that impacted you today?
Well, see, when I grew up, I was over in Howard County. But when we moved out here with the children, it was good. I think it was, because we didn't have any problems with our children. Only had, because my son made the honor roll the first year he was out here and stayed on the honor roll. But my daughter, because girls get in problems, how girls are. We had some problems with Vanessa. But we always taught our children, you know who you are. You know how you were raised.
Yes.
And you know why you go into school. You go into school to learn. So they always did that. And they knew that whatever they did, if it wasn't right, they knew that there was a punishment on the way. So we didn't have too many problems. And for me moving out here, that it was harder on me than it was on the children, because I was in Baltimore, so I was used to going to the store when I wanted to go, and hopping on the bus and going where I wanted to go. But out here, there was no transportation, and I was going crazy because there was no transportation. And when we moved up there, then there weren't. It was only my husband's grandparents were up there, and it was lonely up there. So, but then eventually I got a job as Mr. Selby gave me a job as he was president of transportation out here in Westminster. He gave me a job as a bus monitor because I was on, because I started working with physically, at that time they called them retarded, but I was riding with them. So once I got a job, it wasn't too bad. But at first, it was like, my sister-in-law used to come to my house every day and leave her car with me.
Oh, okay.
Even if I didn't have anywhere to go, I just had to know that there was a car there. And at first, I decided I was going to go back to Baltimore. Well, I said, I just can't stay out here because there was nothing going. But then the longer I stayed and the more people I got involved with, the better it got. And at that time, Lord Help, the mayor,
Yes.
Lord Help was the mayor. And that time, it was most of us were like, they were like younger, you know, and they were easy to get along with, and, you know, and things had just started getting hot out here over the, you know, immigration and all that had just started. But that never bothered us. And like I said, and my children didn't get involved in it.
Yes.
Because we let them know, you know, we let them know what they were to get involved in, what they were to respond to, how they were to respond, because how they were taught. They knew that. So we didn't have any problems, you know, with that. A couple times I had a couple problems in the stores downtown, you know, in Sykesville.
Yes.
I knew that when we came up here. We knew we were going to have some problems with that. But that only happened like maybe once. And once it was like because everybody knew my husband.
Yes.
You know, because Earl used to go around and do field work and cut wood. And so everybody knew him.
Yes.
So once they got to know who I was, then I didn't have any problems. You know, everybody would greet me when I come in, and I just made point to do what I went to Sykesville to do.
Yes.
And do it in a mannerly way, and get it over with, and go back home. You know, so. But now, you know, it's like every day I thank God for Sykesville. But it has grown.
Yes.
And it's growing. And the more we, you know, if we want the town to grow, we all have to work together. We want changes made. If there's changes to be made, then we have to be together to make those changes. And so far, things are looking up. It's not as bad as it used to be, because when we first moved out here, Carroll County had a bad name when we first moved out here, but it's not, because I worked at Change, because when I first started working up there, it was called Carroll Haven. I worked there for 32 years.
Oh, okay.
I was the only black person there for 24 years.
Oh,
they didn't
okay.
have a black instructor for 24 years. But I enjoy it out here now, and I can't say that I had any real bad problems out here.
Well, that's
It's
good to hear.
Yeah.
We are progressing.
Yes, we are. Yes, we are.
What effect did politics have on you as you were growing up?
A lot. Because, you know, when I was growing up, as far as I was concerned, you know, you voted if you felt like it. If you didn't feel like it, you didn't vote. And I was old enough to vote, but I hadn't voted because it didn't interest me. But then, as I got older and got involved, you know, and I was going back and forth to different colleges and everything, and getting involved with other people.
Yes.
Then I found out how important it is to be involved in politics, and how important it is that if changes are to be made, then you have to be a part of it.
Yes.
You know, if you have a problem, then you need to know where to go. You need to know how to fix it, you know, or if there's someone that you know that can fix it, that's what you need to do. And I've learned a lot now. And since I've been in Sykesville, if I have problems, if I have issues, because I don't have problems, if I have an issue, I go, if it's a town issue, then I go to the townhouse and I sit down and we talk about it.
Okay.
If it's something that has to do with the law, then I go to the police department and I go down there and I talk to the chief of police. So everybody in Sykesville knows me. If they run a business, they know who I am. Because I know how to approach people,
Yes.
you know. And so politics, I've come a long ways, really. and I kind of enjoy it now. Although right now it's kind of getting on my nerves. But I was enjoying it when I was on the council. I really enjoyed it because I was involved in all the decisions and everything, you know, the decisions and all that were made. So I
Okay.
enjoyed it.
I guess you've already answered this. It says, tell us about how you got interested in politics, and you said a young man knocked on your door, so that was how you got
Yeah,
interested.
young man, rapped on my door.
Did you have any mentors when you were involved in that inspired you to do something for politics? No.
No, once I was on the council, that was it. Once I got my foot in the door. Once I got my foot in the door, that was it.
Okay.
Yeah.
And what were some of the challenges you faced, and how did you overcome them?
Well, like I said, one of the challenges that I faced when I first came here was, like, you know, when we went to the department stores.
Yes.
And it was almost, which I didn't realize, it wasn't much different than in the city. Because in Baltimore, at that time, everything was just about the same way. You know, you would try on a hat, you had to put something on your hair before you tried a hat on. But I really didn't have many challenges. I think the only problem I had was in the drugstore, because it was a drugstore, and then they also had a little breakfast counter and a luncheon counter in there. And the children went in there one day to get an ice cream cone, and they didn't know that they couldn't sit up on the stool.
Yes.
And the children went in there and got up on the stool and asked for ice cream, and they wanted an ice cream cone. And then one of the workers came out and told them that they could get an ice cream cone, but they couldn't stay in there and eat it. So I had to go in there, you know, and then have a little discussion with them about that. But then that didn't last, because, you know, we went about it in a dignified way.
Yes.
You know, to let them know that my children were human. You know, and all they wanted was an ice cream cone. And all you have to do is to say, well, you know, we will serve you here, but you can't sit here, but, you know, there's a way to talk to children.
Yes.
And that was the first and last time that we had any problems with the children.
Oh, okay.
Because the children knew then that if they wanted to go in the drugstore, you go in the drugstore, get what you want, and you bring it home. So there was no problem, you know, with that either.
Okay. What wisdom did you receive from others after serving your community?
Oh boy, that's where I got my learning. Was from I got my learning from going into the communities, you know, and I learned a lot about people. And I got involved, what I really got involved in was the Schoolhouse Road, when they started developing down on Schoolhouse Road. Down Schoolhouse Road. That's when I really that's really when I got involved into politics, because that got to be a real blown up thing, you know, down in there, because there were people that didn't want that development down there. But then, you know, I guess by being Doug Sands' sister, once I got involved, and I was going to stay involved in it. The one thing that did happen to me, though, that I got a nickname for being involved in that. They used to call me Oreo. They called me Oreo because they said I was black on the outside and white on the inside. Because I could never understand why they didn't want a development down there. You know, it didn't have anything to do with who was going to live there.
Yes.
You know, like whether they were black or white. It was just that the people that were there just didn't want anything down there. They didn't want people down there at all.
Okay.
But once everything, the papers and all were drawn up, and the council had gotten excited about it. We were all excited about it. And then our pastor, Reverend Johnson, was the pastor at that time. He was excited about it. So I'm like everybody else says, I want a part of this too. So I got involved in it too, and that's where I got my nickname. And that stayed with me a long time. But then as things got better, and once they got the development up, and then I always got to the point where I would go down there. You know, I would just go down there and meet people and sit and talk with people and everything. So, and then it got better, and now it's really good. But that's probably where I got my political, influence from. I think was there.
Well, I've been to the colored schoolhouse several times. I was there for the dedication, and to have the Dorsey family there, and they tell about their experience of going there. I think that's a wonderful thing that happened for Carroll County.
It was. It was.
It really is.
It is. It is. And people come out there from the city.
I know, in Howard County and
Howard County, and the school children go down there. They have classes down there.
And that's a good thing, because that way they get to understand, because
Exactly.
I'm a visual person. So that means a lot to me. Telling me means, you know, it's just not going there, but if I can see, touch, or feel. And I think that helps, especially with younger children.
Yeah, it does. It helps with the little children. It's really good. And the thing about it is, too, is that there are all cultures down there now.
Yes.
You know, and that's a good part about it. And the kids are all going to school together, you know, so it's good. Sykesville has come a long ways. A long ways.
Well, what's good about Sykesville, it still has the country feel versus Eldersburg.
Right, yeah.
Has developed into a more of a metropolis kind of area.
Right.
Can you tell me about one of your favorite memories in office?
Well, I guess, excuse me, I guess that was my favorite thing, was when I got involved in the Schoolhouse Road development. And, you know, and everybody on the council, you know, all the council people, everybody on the council accepted me, you know, and it wasn't like I was going to be on a first name basis with them, you know. I enjoyed it. It really was. Once I got it, and I would still be in there if I could have been. I would have still been.
Well, it's not too late to run again.
Well, yeah, right. The next time.
Yes,
maybe.
the next time.
I have to get somebody else to rap on my door.
What words of advice would you like to pass on to the future generations about politics and the importance of serving the community?
Politics are very important. That's the first thing that I would tell them. Politics are very important, but you must know what you're getting into. You must know how to go about it, and you have to have a degree of responsibility, you know, to yourself and to other people. And I would advise young people as they come up, as they grow up, don't wait until you get to be teenagers, or don't wait until you get married, or don't wait until something comes up and then you decide you're going to get involved. Be interested as they come along.
Yes.
You know, get interested and staying interested, you know, interested in as they go along, you know, because you never know. The world have a lot to offer us now.
Yes.
You know, and we need to enjoy it. We need to take advantage of it. You know, and we need to be dignified. You know, we need to be mannerly. We need to be and we need to learn to turn the other cheek. You know, and we also don't start whatever they do, whatever children do. And I tell my grandson all the time, you know, the changes that come about in your life are not. It's not luck. We don't have luck. They're blessings from God. Everything we have is a blessing from God. Yes. And that's the one thing that I tell my grandson, and that's the one thing that I try to make sure, you know, that people learn. And that's why I try to do And I always do the very best that I can for anybody who asks me to do anything. If I'm available, then I do that. And that's every morning when I have my devotions, that's the one thing that I always pray for. And I thank God that I'm healthy.
Yes.
I have never taken a prescription medication in my life.
Oh my goodness.
And that's what I tell my children, and I always talk to my children. Even the children that I worked with when I was working with change, that was the one thing that I made sure that they learned was to be clean and be mannerly.
Yes.
You know, whatever you do those things. And remember that wherever you go, and remember not who you are, but whose you are, you know, and don't never forget that there's always someone you can come to, and that's God.
Yes.
Because, you know, he's always there. And I try my best to be available, you know, to everybody, because I'm always on the road. Anybody calls me and asks me to do anything, I do that because I'm healthy.
Yes.
And I'm, you know, and now that I'm living by myself, I can stop what I'm doing
Yes.
and go, you know, to help people. And that's the one thing that my daughter learned, is that, you know, to be available, make yourself available, because what you have is not so, whatever it is you have does not put you above anyone else.
True.
You know, because if somebody needs you, then that means if somebody needs me, then I need somebody.
Yes.
You know, that's the way I look at it. So, yeah, I'm doing fine.
Well,
yeah.
I'd like to thank you, Mrs.
Oh, you're
Norris, for
welcome.
taking time to come and do this interview this morning.
This
I've
was a
enjoyed
joy.
it. And I'm
Thank
sure we'll
you.
be using you at other times.
And I have enjoyed this. It was a good ride up here. It was.
We certainly will call on you again.
All right.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Will you please state your name, how long you've lived in Carroll County, and what political offices you hold or have held in the past?
Okay, my name is Perry Leroy Jones Jr. and have lived in Union Bridge since 1970. Have worked in the area and lived around Carroll, you know, right outside of Carroll County pretty much all my life, but have lived right on Main Street in Union Bridge since 1970. Politically, I have held, was on Union Bridge Town Council from 1980, July of 1980 through 2002, which I served at that time 11 years on the town council and 12 years as mayor. And at 2002, ran for county commissioner seat and was successful. And from 2002 to 2006 was county commissioner. And then I took kind of a leave of absence for a couple of years, and then in 2010 came back as mayor of Union Bridge again. And that's my political status right there at this time.
Okay. What was your family life like, and how did it impact who you are today, growing up in Union Bridge?
Well, I think with my parents, they were very, very stern, you know, with what they've always done in their life. And my mother had always said, you know, never let anyone tell you that you can't do something, because that just gives you more power to show them that you can do it. Fortunately, we in Union Bridge at the time that I was growing up, we didn't have a lot of problems with, you know, race discrimination or anything like that. It was pretty much subtle in Union Bridge at that time. It was very interesting growing up there. Like I said, my dad had a business there, and we joined the fire company. You know, he was on the town council. When he passed away, they asked me if I would, you know, serve his next 11 months, and 11 months ended up being almost a lifetime. But it was, the people in Union Bridge made it more of I think that was part of the county that was more of like a family. oriented atmosphere compared to different parts of other parts of Carroll County. Very nice growing up.
Tell about how you got interested in politics and who were your mentors?
Well, when I was in high school, I was always on student government committee all through high school. And I guess the summer of 1969, I was chosen out of two young boys out of Linganore High School where I went to school. We got a chance to go to Boys State in Annapolis. And that was a week of like government and very challenging different things that we did that week in Boys State. And I guess I really got started in high school as student government because I was always in student government the whole time I was there. And when I got out of high school, I guess joined the fire company. I held a couple of different offices within the fire company. And then, like I said, when my dad passed away, the mayor of Union Bridge at the time, Ed Willier, came to me and asked me if I would fill the next 11 months of my dad's term. And I thought about it, and I talked to the mayor, and I talked to Thomas Weinberner, that was a long-time member of the council, and they said, you can do it, give it a try. So I did. I figured 11 months, till the next election, that would be it. And I ran for re-election at that time, and I've been there ever since. So it's been very nice.
And what do you think they saw in you to ask you to continue with your father's portion of that?
I assume it was probably the way that they saw that my father and my mother raised us in Union Bridge. Like I say, we had a business in town and we were always there, and we was kind of like a focal point of the town. If anybody needed anything, any assistance, that's like where they always came. They'd come to us for, didn't matter what it was, whether it was for their cars broke down or helping to move or helping to strong arm something. We were always there for everybody.
Mm-hmm. And what effect did politics have on you as you were growing up during the political times?
Well, I guess it was kind of strange because when I was in elementary school, it was the time that John F. Kennedy was in office, and I always admired John F. Kennedy. And I looked at some of the things that he did, and with John F. Kennedy and Martin Luther King, had they not been so strong in what they were pushing for, the average black person in America wouldn't be where they are today. And I just, it was funny because when we talk about John F. Kennedy, my parents were Democrats. And when I was old enough to vote, I registered as a Democrat and was a Democrat, until the time, years later, I think in 2000, I switched from a Democrat to Republican Party. And the first time I ran for office was in 1998, and I ran as a Democrat, and I was unsuccessful. There was 3 commissioners. I came in 4th place because there was a lady down in southern Carroll County that she ran as an independent and had a few more votes than myself. So I guess I really got a really good push into politics after my dad passed away, and I got onto the town council and got a chance to go to the Maryland Municipal League Convention and the different meetings around Carroll County. And it was a whole different aspect on, this is something you have to look at forward to the future. It's not just what you're looking at today, but you have to make Carroll County a place where you want to live and grow up and have your children to grow up. So that's when I really got, really, really interested.
Okay. What were some of the challenges you faced, and how did you overcome them?
Well, as far as my political part of it, there wasn't a lot of challenges at the time when I was getting involved in politics. Like I say, it was 1980, 81. Not a lot of challenges there. There was a few more challenges back in late 72 when I joined the Union Bridge Fire Company, and it wasn't within our fire department, because our fire department, Union Bridge Fire Department, they came to us and asked us if we would join the fire company because they needed help, as volunteers, and we were right there. Some of the issues were some of the people, not in Union Bridge, but like when we went on a fire call or ambulance call that was in the outside areas of Union Bridge, they were a little reluctant to, when I first started riding the ambulance, they'd look at me and say, what's this man doing here? He's not working on me or not taking me to the hospital. And that happened a couple times. Like in 1968, which my father bought the business that we are still in today. He bought the business himself in 1968 in May, which was a month after Martin Luther King was killed. And my father worked at that same station for about 5 years prior to that. And he actually ran the business for a gentleman, two different gentlemen. One gentleman's name was Jim Singer and Marvin Singer. They were brothers, and they were never there. So my father ran the business for them. And the day that the business changed over, he said, well, if I'm going to run the business for you, I'm going to have it for myself. And when the name changed out front from Singer's Golf, and my father, his name was Perry Jones, but they called him Tuck, and the sign went up, Tuck's Golf, we actually lost a few customers at that time because they says, we're not dealing with him. They were actually dealing with him for 5 years prior to that because he ran the business for the gentlemen that weren't there. So Marvin and Jim, actually helped my father get established in, as one of the first black businesses in the county. And they were very supportive of him. They felt that, but they had jobs other places, so they actually trusted him to run their business for years. So then when he started the business for himself, I was still, I think I started working there for them also when 1966. So, I was like 13 years old when I started there. So a lot of the people in the area saw me grow up from just a little guy up. So I think they had to trust in me, Also knowing that my mom was very strict. I think even today, if I didn't do what she told me to do, she'd kind of put foot in my behind, which a lot of kids don't get today. So I think they saw that family atmosphere. And as far as growing up, I think it was a lot easier for myself and my brother and my sister than it would have been for, different parts of Carroll County rather than Union Bridge.
Now, talk about why you changed to Republican Party and how were you received in the community when you did that?
Well, I had some friends of mine that called me one day and asked me, in 1998 if they wanted to meet me, and I met them at a restaurant one evening. They said, we'd like to support you to run for county commissioner. And I was kind of shocked. I told them, I said, I'm going to have to take a little bit of time to think about this. And they had told me at that time, they said, there's only one problem. You're a registered Democrat, and Democrats don't do well in Carroll County. I said, I've always been a Democrat. And they said, yeah, but you think more like a Republican, so you should be a Democrat. You should be a Republican rather than a Democrat. I'm kind of middle of the road. And, being hard-headed, I ran the first time as a Democrat. And like I say, fell short of just a couple hundred votes. So then in the year 2000, which was 2 years before the next election, I changed parties. And I had some, good advice from different people. We've had very good politicians in Carroll County that were Democrats that changed parties, Sheriff Tregoning, State's Attorney Jerry Barnes, and several others had switched parties early in life. So, at that time I switched parties, and there were some on the Republican Party that was very upset because I switched parties, and I didn't ask them if I could change to their party. And I said, I thought this was America. I didn't have to ask you if I could change parties. But and when I ran the first time, I had a lot of people told me, I really wanted to vote for you, but you were a Democrat, and I couldn't vote for you because I'm a Republican. And I think a lot of times, sometimes you have to stop and not think about the party, but think about the person. I think that's our biggest problem in America today. They don't think about the person. They're sticking to their party lines, and it's just not the way it should absolutely be. And I think I did well as a Republican, in Carroll County as a county commissioner. And I think, I've served with some really good people within the county, and I'm still very involved in the county. When I was county commissioner, I was on the Maryland Association of Counties, their board of directors, and I did very well there also, because in the year of 2005, out of the state of Maryland, through MACO, I was selected as one of the people to go to New York City for a week's training for leadership training. And they picked one person out of the state of Maryland. I was chosen as that person. So, you know, I've been very lucky in my career. Wouldn't change it for the world, you know, and I think it's been a great opportunity.
What wisdom did you receive from others about serving in your community?
Well, Don Elliott, which was our delegate in the area, he was always very supportive. He was the kind of guy that I could call at any time if I had, you know, a question or anything. And like I say, when I got on the town council, I was lucky enough to get on the board of directors with Maryland Municipal League, and you always have, they ask you who are your contacts, you know, if you know a delegate or a senator or someone. So I worked very closely with Don Elliott, and then when I was county commissioner, Delegate Susan Krebs came on board, and I worked very closely with her, and we still do as back as a town council person. And we have this, when you stop and look at our political field today, you know, I have people that we have supported each other a lot. We have like Haven Shoemaker. He started out on the Hampstead Town Council when I was a council person, and he went to mayor, and now he's running for delegate. So we have people that have, you know, like the last 15 to 20 years have gone through the political field together, and we've learned to know each other. So we more or less know that we're on first name basis. We have our home phone numbers, and we have a problem, we can get on that phone and call that person, and they're very supportive.
Tell about one of your favorite memories in office. What is something really special, or a couple special moments where you say, oh yeah, I'll never forget that?
Some of the special things, I guess it's just, it's the feeling that I was always the type of person that I made everybody a friend. Back in 2006, after the primary election, I went back to the county office building the very next day. The next morning, I got there about 8 o'clock in the morning, and there was a lot of the county employees, from the custodians in the building to the secretaries and directors, and everybody come to me and says, well, why are you here today? I says, because I have a job to do. You know, and to have the people there, I mean, they, you know, you got the hug, they were crying and everything. They were sorry that I was leaving. And I just felt that these people, not just there, but so many people in the county that I've got to know over the years, they're just like family. I mean, I have meetings at the county office building a couple times a week now, and when I go into that building, there's always this warmth of the people. Then I go in, and they're just like, you know, we wish you were here, and you know, and they still come and they give me a hug. And Dean Minnick, my other commissioner, fellow commissioner, Dean Minnick, one time said, can't understand this. He said, you walk in this building, everybody gives you a hug, and they're glad to see you. They don't do that to me. And I said, well, you know, it could be a difference here. But I've always been taught to treat people the way you want to be treated. That was drove into my head from my parents. And I guess to be able to walk almost anywhere you go, in any department store or any restaurant in this county, I run into somebody I know every time. And it's just the way people come up to you, and, you know, it's just like they're part of my family.
What words of advice would you like to pass on to future generations about politics and the importance of just serving in your community?
Well, I think what a lot of politicians forget today, that you have to be truthful with people. And the biggest thing is that when you're campaigning, you go out there and you do it from the heart. I'm not into this dirty campaigning that you see a lot of today. I think you should be there and tell people what you want to do, and you be yourself. Don't come out and be somebody that you can't be, and somebody that you can't fulfill those needs once you get there, because it'll come back to bite you. And you just have to be honest with people.
And what about young people? What would you say to them today?
Young people today, I think,
Who might want to get into politics?
I think that, and they're getting younger all the time. I think they need to start early, and they not just to pick out one politician that they may like, but to start and really when the campaigns come around, take an interest into how the people are campaigning and what they're saying. Do some background check on the people. Just because a man or a lady sitting up there and they're talking about how great they are or what they want to do, I think today's world, everybody has to do a little investigation on that person herself. You know, you sit back and you can't always read. You read a little bit on Twitter or Facebook, but you have to really, especially our local elections, you really have to get out when they have these public forums, get out and listen to the people, talk to them, get them, you know, where you can get them on a one-on-one basis and get them off to the side and talk to them and try to be friends with them, see who they are, what they're really about. And then when it comes to the national elections, you really have to spend the time and watching on TV and seeing what they have to say, watching the person. And I think really you have to look a person in the eye and when they're on TV and when they're talking, watch them. Look at their expressions, because that tells you a lot. You know, anybody can get up there and say anything and promise it, but a lot of times you can see these people's expressions saying, you know, you can tell they're not there.
Is there anything else you'd like to share about yourself that I haven't touched on?
No, I think living in Carroll County is probably one of the best counties in the state of Maryland as far as I'm concerned. Like I say, the people have been so great to not just me, but to everybody in this county. We make people that come in the county, we make them feel welcome. Everybody has different views, but I think, you know, you have to sit down, and just because somebody just moves into the community, everybody looks at them as an outsider. But sometimes some of their views really help you along, because they may have experienced something that you haven't had a chance to experience by living, you know, in the same place for 30 or 40 years. These people, you know, everybody has a little bit difference, and that's worthwhile listening to.
I know you said a lot about your dad. Is there anything else you want to add about the type of man he was?
Well,
As being the first, can you share what he was one of the first of?
well, he was, as far as I know, he was one of the first black business owners in Carroll County. You know, he always had that little bit of a doubt. You know, he knew he could do it, but he didn't know how it was going to be received at that time, because, you know, 1968, the country was in an uproar, you know, after Martin Luther King was killed, and there was a lot of challenges, not in just Carroll County, but all over the United States. So, and he knew he could pull through that. And then we had, you know, several major floods in Union Bridge, and he fostered through that kind of stuff. And when we joined the Union Bridge Fire Company, like I say, they came to us and asked us to join because we were right there, and, you know, we were the first black volunteer firemen in Carroll County. So it was.
You and your father?
My father and I were first. And, you know, it was like him, my mother always said that, like I said before, you can always do anything you want to do if you put your mind to it. Don't let anybody tell you can't. And that was just drove into us. And, you know, you always kind of like to excel and do the best you could. And, you know, that's a little bit like our business. You know, we've been there since 1968, and there's a lot of things we can do on the cars, but if a person brings a car in, well, we'll be the first to tell them, you know, this is a little bit more than we can handle. I think you ought to take it to a dealer. A lot of our customers will come in with a car and they'll have a problem, and we'll look at it and say, you know, this should come under your warranty. You know, take it back to the dealer and you get this done for free. And I think our customers appreciate that, because, you know, we could do the work, a lot of it, and charge them for it, but if it's still under warranty, a lot of people don't understand the warranty books. It's maybe a 30,000 or 36,000 or 50,000 or 60,000 mile warranty. You know, take it to the dealer and get it done. It's free. We can do it, but it's going to cost you money. And they appreciate that. So they'll bring their children's car in, or their aunt or uncle or neighbor's car in. So I think that's what's made us successful over the years.
And you haven't said your dad and your mom's name.
My dad was Perry Jones Sr., and they called him Tuck. And my mom is Annie Jones. She was Annie Hoy, and she married my father back in 1950, I guess it was. So they've had they had a very happy life. And my father, like I say, he passed away at early age of 49 with a massive heart attack. So we keep chugging along.
Well, thank you very much for sharing today.
Well, thank you.
Yeah, appreciate it.